Hey guys, so it's been a super long time since I posted anything to YouTube, and I've had a lot of people asking me on Facebook lately to please at least do an update for YouTube. So, had some time, and my fish room's actually pretty clean for once, so I decided I'd go ahead and do a little update and show you guys what I've got going on. I kind of got tired of doing the whole YouTube thing. The negative comments were starting to get to me, and it just wasn't fun, so I just stopped doing it. Never started doing YouTube to be like a YouTube personality or try to, get money or anything like that. I just did it to kind of have a record of what's going on in my fish room and maybe along the way share a few pearls of wisdom with new breeders and people new to the betta hobby. But when it got to the point where I was, having anxiety about opening my comments because I kept getting negative comments and people, trying to tell me how to run things, I just was over it. And so that's why I haven't really been posting. And I'm not promising you that I'm going to start posting videos again. But I know a lot of you really do like and appreciate the videos, so I'm going to make a conscientious effort to at least try to do these updates every once in a while, so you guys can see what's going on. As always, the best place to know what's going on with my fish room and to see when I have fish for sale and all that is my Facebook page, which is also Moon River Bettas. That is where any fish I have for sale get posted. And that's where I update about my spawns and all kinds of things like that. Also run a couple Facebook groups, the Eastern Betta Society. I help admin the International Betta Congress Facebook group and the Betta Breeders United Facebook group, all of which are really great resources if you're looking to find out more about bettas, not just breeding, but bettas in general. So anyway, I figured I'd go around and show you what's going on in the fish room. I have fish I've gotten since I last posted a video, and I have lots and lots of babies to show you. Things have been going really well lately, so let's just dive right in, and we'll start with Hammer here. Those of you that were following my channel before will remember that Hammer is my Flowerhorn. I've had her about a year and a half. And she is a female. I get a lot of people trying to tell me that she's a male because normally females don't have heads that large. But I've caught her laying eggs on multiple occasions, so she is definitely 100% female. She just happens to be one that has a really large head. And she's doing really well. She loves to play. She's right next to our back door here. So anytime, we go to let the dogs in or out to go potty or go in and out there for whatever reason, she always comes to say hi. You can see her tank from my front door down the hallway, and so anytime we get, delivery guys or people coming over, the first thing they see is her, and they always want to ask questions. So she's very popular with everybody. And she just hangs out, swims around, rearranges her tank. It's kind of bare right now. I had to borrow her filter. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then she also had a terracotta pot in here, but she's now so large that she can move that pot around on her own. And I was scared that she would hit it against the glass and cause a crack. So I took it out, and I'll be getting her a plastic pot for her to play with. But she's about 9 inches now, give or take. I don't think she's going to get any bigger, but she will probably get taller and wider as she ages. So that's Hammer. Moving on down to the Goldfish. I actually just recently rescaped this tank. Hi, Bella. Move out of the way, please. So I gave them a little bit more swimming room. They're actually going to be getting an upgrade this year, either into a 75 or bigger. I'm hoping to get maybe a 90 gallon or even a 120 in here, but definitely at least into a 75. I lost several of my older goldfish over the summer. Some passed away while I was on vacation. I think I had a nitrite spike or something like that. And then I had a couple that got sick and I ended up having to euthanize them. So most of these guys are newer. I have a couple of ranchu. I can get a little closer. A couple of ranchu I got from a local fish store. The white one's name is Egbert, and then this little guy's name is Nugget, because he kind of reminded me of a chicken nugget. That guy doesn't really have a name. I got him and this guy, this fat guy right here, and another fantail that you'll see a little later. I got all three of them after one of my older goldfish passed away, because I couldn't decide which one I wanted to take home. And figured I'd grow them out for a little while, and then when it's warmer and people are looking for goldfish, I'll rehome the two that I'm least attached to. So this black guy will probably be getting rehomed. This fat guy, who I think is a Ryukin cross, he's got a very short body. He was labeled as a fantail, but just doesn't seem to be acting like a fantail as far as how he's growing. He's probably my favorite goldfish right now. His name is Wilbur, because he's like a pig. And he's just super personable. He's the most personable out of the goldfish I have right now. And then this little black ranchu right here is Ozzy. And my sister actually picked him out. She fell in love with his face. This big fantail is one of my older ones. Her name is Tigger. So that's all of them in the tank for right now. I do have another one in quarantine I just recently got, so we'll walk over and see him. I'll talk about these tanks in a moment. So this is my new guy. I just got him last week. He was turned into my local fish store. And they posted him on their Facebook page. And when I found out how cheaply they were selling him, I just had to have him. I've wanted a really nice Oranda for a while, and I just didn't want to pay the big bucks it takes to get one of these really nice guys. So it kind of felt like fate when he popped up at the fish store. So he's in quarantine right now. I know the tank's a little bit small, but he gets water changes every day. And I've got extra filtration on there and stuff to make sure that the water quality stays good for him. This little guy is the other fantail I mentioned that I got a while back when I got the other two. And I just put him in here to go through quarantine with this big guy, so he wouldn't be alone. He seems very healthy. He hasn't shown any signs of illness, so I wasn't too worried about contaminating the other fish, but they'll stay in here for probably another week or two, go through a treatment of general cure, and just be monitored to make sure he's looking good. His name is Elvis because he kind of looks like he has sideburns, so he reminded my sister of Elvis, so that's the name we chose for him. He's absolutely stunning, and he's huge. He's by far the biggest goldfish I've ever owned. So that's the goldfish, and then we'll move back over here to grow out tanks. As I said, I have a lot of babies right now. For some reason this year my spawns have just done really well. I haven't had any of the die-off issues I've been having. I don't know what I've done differently, or if my water just changed or what, but I definitely have been way more successful with these spawns than I have in the last several years. So it's kind of a blessing and a curse, because as you'll notice as I go around, I have a ton of fry. And basically what happened was, in the past I would do multiple spawns at once, 5, 6, 7 pairs I'd put into spawn at the same time, because my spawns were dying off. I don't know if it was water or something else, but my pairs would spawn, and inevitably, like around the second week, I would get a die off, so my spawns ended up very small with only like 30 or 40 fish. So I got used to doing a bunch of spawns at once, so I would have a decent amount of fish to raise. But unfortunately, what happened this time is I did 7 spawns, thinking that some would die off or maybe a couple pairs wouldn't breed or whatever. And what ended up happening is they all spawned. They all had humongous spawns, and I've had little to no die off. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. I've been wishing and wishing that my spawns would stop dying off, but now I have an insane amount of fry. So I'll talk more about each individual spawn. We'll go back over here to the grow out tanks. This one is a 55 gallon, and then this one's a 30 gallon. The 55 gallon I just recently set up as a grow out tank. Before it was a community tank with some rainbows and some tetras and some other stuff in it, but despite quarantining those fish when I got them, I introduced some sort of disease to that tank, and I spent 6 months and about $200 in different medications trying to treat this tank and trying to stop those fish from dying off. And I ended up just tearing the tank completely down. I put the plants into quarantine. I put the gravel in a bucket outside because it's too cold for me to rinse it out right now. When it warms up in the spring, I'll rinse all that out and bake it. And then I culled or euthanized a lot of the fish that were in that tank. I only kept ones that had not been affected or been sick at all. So just my plecos and a gold gourami. All the tetras and the rainbows were mainly the ones getting sick. So those are the ones that I decided to euthanize, because at that point, after spending all that money and time, it wasn't worth it, the risk of contaminating my entire fish room. So I'm really bummed about that. The rainbows I had actually spawned and raised myself. It was the first time I'd ever bred rainbow fish. And it really sucked to lose them. And in the future, I want to get some more. But the bright side is it opened up this tank for a grow out space, and it's something I sorely needed. But when I took down that tank, obviously I had to disinfect the filters and everything. So that's why I borrowed Hammer's filter and why she just has a bubbler over there. It had an air stone on it, but she keeps taking the air stone off. So her sponge filter's in here for these guys. And these spawns are all mixed together. I can tell them apart. I made sure not to mix any spawns where I might confuse the fish based on color or whatever. And what I've done is these guys in the 55 are all the biggest ones. They're the ones that are almost ready to go into jars, but not quite. I want to get a little bit of body size onto them. I do have some that have been jarred. I'll show you in a little bit. They've been jarred for being butt heads and nipping and whatnot, but I'm trying to leave them in the tanks as long as possible because that allows them to grow their body size before they get into the jars and start really growing out their fins. So the largest ones go in here, and I've been keeping this tank relatively understocked compared to my other tanks. This tank has about 250 fish in it, which I know sounds like a lot, but when we go down to look at like this tank, this one has or had over 600 in it, and that number has dwindled down as I've culled out ones with deformities. I've moved the bigger ones into the bigger tank and stuff like that, but it's still pretty well stocked. I do water changes on these tanks, usually every day to every other day. Sometimes I let it go a little bit longer. These guys haven't had a water change in about 4 or 5 days now because it's been the Christmas holiday. I had family over and all that. But as you can see, they're completely fine. They have 2 sponge filters in here and just a complete forest of guppy grass to help with any nitrate issues, I mean, as well as duckweed. So just tons and tons and tons of babies. As far as what spawns I have, I did 7 spawns, as I mentioned. 2 of them are F2 spawns, meaning they're second generation spawns. I bred a couple spawns in March that did really well, and from those spawns I continued the line. So all of these kind of light pinky colored ones are from a Grizzle Mascot Half Moon spawn, and they are F2, so their parents were ones I raised. And then all of these orange ones are from a chocolate orange Veiltail spawn that I raised, so they are also a second generation. Then we have some red crown tails, if it'll focus on them. There's one male right there. Red crown tails, which were just from a random pair I found at PetSmart. I thought they looked pretty okay. Decided to breed them and see what I got. All the dark ones that are copper and turquoise green, they're all from a copper marble double tail male crossed to a turquoise half moon female. Those again, there's a nice green one right there. Those again were random PetSmart and Petco finds, and they ended up being really nice. What else do I have in here? Oh, and then I crossed a red plakat male to a long fin orange double tail female. So these other red ones in here that are not crown tails come from that line. So that's part of my spawns. Down here in this tank, I also have some from a crown tail plakat spawn. I think this is one right here. It's hard to focus on them because of the light. Yeah, that's a little crown tail plakat female. That spawn was probably my smallest one out of all the 7. And even that one still had 150 fish in it, so quite a few. And then over here, this is more of the red cross to the orange DT. This spawn had 700 fish in it. It was a ginormous spawn. In fact, this tank and this tank are both the same spawn. This is more of the red crown tails. Some of the smaller ones that aren't ready to go in the big tank yet. And then this tank, and then going back down here, this tank over here are all the same spawn. This was orange Dalmatian crossed to a bicolor Dalmatian. So the father, which happens to be right here, is your normal orange Dalmatian with the orange body and then the orange and red speckled fins. And then the female, which unfortunately passed away, was dark bodied. So all of these ones that have the black bodies, eventually they'll develop orange fins and the spots on them. So this again was another humongous spawn. I haven't counted this one. I know I put 150 in here. I put 150 in the tank down there. And I don't know how many are left in this tank. I'm guessing about 200. So again, just giant spawns this go around. Lots and lots of babies. I do have some that I've jarred. As I said, I'm trying to let most of them stay in the grow out tank so that they will get body size. But these guys were all being mean, trying to eat their friends, so they had to go in jars. And you'll see some of them, like this guy, are much more mature than the other ones. They're all the same age, but they will mature at different rates. That one's from the copper marble half moon spawn. This guy's a chocolate orange Veiltail, as is this guy. This guy is the only crown tail I've jarred so far. He's super cute. This guy and his neighbor are from the orange, or the red plakat crossed to the orange longfin. And then these again are more from the copper marble spawn. I really love that green one right there. Have some more on the other side that I just jarred. Besides that, I don't have too many jarred fish right now. I've been kind of getting rid of some of my stock because I knew I was going to need to have as much room as possible to jar these new guys. So these guys were all jarred yesterday, so you'll notice that they don't flare as easily as the other ones that have been jarred a little bit longer. That guy obviously does it. He's got it down. And then these guys were flaring pretty good. But as they grow, they'll learn how to flare better and their fins will start growing out. This is the only Dalmatian I've jarred so far. You can see he's starting to get his spots in. The rest of them, they're all, oops, sorry. I zoomed way in. The rest of these are all fish I've bred. Some of them are going to be posted for sale on my Facebook page. It's coming pretty soon. I want to give some time for the holiday rush to settle down before I start shipping. But I'll be listing them for sale in the US pretty soon. These are all females. Some of them, like this crown tail female, I'm holding back to breed and possibly send to shows. This lady here is the mother to these guys up here. You can see the family resemblance. So I raised her. She was born back in March, and I bred her in October. These guys are all her siblings, all her sisters. A couple of her brothers, which I know you can't see. This is the dark side of my shelf. And then some reds and oranges from a spawn I did during the summer. So not a lot of jars right now, but in the coming months I'm definitely going to have a lot. Here's some veil tails that are uncles to the chocolate veil tails. These guys are all being held back to show, hopefully, as are a lot of these guys. Some of these will be listed for sale, and some will not. This guy is my crown tail placotte male. Unfortunately, the female passed away, but I have him, and I'm hoping to breed him again pretty soon. Moving on from babies, you might have noticed this guy as I went past. This is Gordito, and he is my other Flowerhorn. And I don't remember if I actually introduced him or not the last time I did a video. I'm thinking not, but I can't remember exactly when was the last video I put out. I got him in March. I went to a local event they do up in Maryland called the Big Fish Deal. And we found out that there just happened to be a aquarium store really close by that event. So after we left there, we went by that aquarium store just to look. I'm sure everybody who watches this has done the same thing. You just go in to look and suddenly you see something that you can't live without. And I saw this little guy. Hello, Mallow. I saw this little guy. He was only about 3 inches. And he was just so gorgeous. I had to have him. So, he was an impulse buy, but he's turned out to be probably my favorite fish that I have right now. His name is Gordito, which means like chubby boy, which fits him really well because I've never seen him actually be full. He'll eat and eat. He's very mean. He has and will probably again draw blood. So anytime I put my hand in there, I have to either block him off with this little divider I made, or I have to beat him with one of those algae scrubbers on a stick because he's just absolutely vicious. He's also super smart. He knows a few tricks. He knows how to jump, and he knows how to spin in circles. He's just all around great guy. He's actually due for a tank upgrade pretty soon, but he seems to really like being in that 29 gallon, so I'm not in too much of a rush to move him. Down there is just kind of a quarantine tank. As I mentioned, some of the fish that was in the 55 that I tore down went into quarantine. So they're all down there, and they'll stay in there for at least 2 or 3 months till I'm absolutely sure that they're clean. And then I don't know what I'll do with it. I'll rehome them or do something. Not sure. Oh, what else do I have? This tank has Betta stictos in it, which is a wild Betta, similar to Splendens. They're a gorgeous blue-green color. There's the male right there. And they just bred over Christmas, and he has fry in here. See if I can find one to zoom in on. They breed the exact same way as Bettas. The male makes a bubble nest, and then he embraces the female. So there's a fry right there, that little black dot. As you can see, they can breed in a completely planted tank. They do just fine. They actually prefer it. They tend to be more stressed in a bare tank. And I'll probably remove this male tomorrow, if not tonight. The female is also still hiding in there somewhere. I'll remove both of them, put them in jars, and just let the fry grow out in this tank. I have more wilds in jars up here, just getting fattened up before I spawn them. There's Betta Hendra, which you're not going to be able to see because they're, oh, there's one. They tend to hide. So there's one in there. It's not a really good view of it. And then this guy is an Alba Marginata, and his babies are in this tank. See if I can zoom in and find some. They're about a month old. This tank is above my head, so it's really hard for me to reach up there and show you guys, but there's one baby. There's about 13 of them in there. And so he's just in the jar so he can get fattened back up after holding those babies. These are just some pet tanks. This crown tail is the brother to the female I showed you a little bit ago. I'll be spawning them pretty soon. He's also one I raised over the spring and summer. I just stuck him in here because he was still a little bit small despite having been spawned back in the spring, and sometimes tossing them into a little bit bigger tank allows them to get a little bit of a growth spurt. And then there's just a little pet guy in here. I'm not even sure if you'll be able to see it because that little tank is so dark. There he is. He'll probably be a gift for someone. Just a kind of purpley guy. So that's pretty much it. There hasn't been much that's changed in the fish room besides the number of fish I have. I did get this awesome 55-gallon water barrel. I found it on Facebook Marketplace for 25 bucks. Cut a hole in it, and now I can store a lot more water than I was before, which makes it easier to do water changes. I don't have to refill as often. We're probably going to be getting rid of that godforsaken treadmill finally. And on that wall over there, I'll be putting in a rack with a couple 40-gallon breeders and probably some shelves for more jars. This tank is just temporary, this stand, and everything will be taken down as soon as Elvis comes out of quarantine. Oh, what else? What else? That's pretty much it. As I said, I'm going to be upgrading the Goldfish pretty soon, so I'll be building a stand and putting them in a larger tank up where Hammer is, and then Hammer going down on the bottom, just because their tank is a little bit more showy than hers. Just storage over here and some whiteworm cultures. That tank down there is the plants from the 55 that are in quarantine. They'll stay in there for the winter, And then in the summer, when it warms up, I'm going to take this tank down and reseal it, because when I bought it, I resealed it because it's a super old tank. You can see how thick the glass is compared to this 55. It doesn't have the center brace either. Super nice tank, but I resealed it just to make sure it didn't leak. But I did a really crappy job. I didn't tape it off, and the silicone got everywhere, and it's not leaking, but it just looks like crap. So I figured, since the tank doesn't have gravel or anything in it, I'm just going to leave it bare bottom. And then when it's warm enough that I can put it in the garage and reseal it, I'll do that, and then set it back up with all the gravel and the plants and everything. So until then, the plants are just down in there in quarantine. They have a light, and I feed them with plant fertilizer instead of fish waste, because there's no fish in there. Bella's taking a nap. And then last but not least, this is Poppy. She is a red devil. I've had her for quite a while, but I don't think I ever shared her on YouTube, because she was living up in my bedroom for a long time, and finally decided to move her down here when I got a bearded dragon over the summer. I'd introduce you to him, but he's actually in brumation. He's hibernating right now, so he's asleep and not very fun to look at. But I just saw Poppy at the PetSmart one day, and I just had to have her. Her little white body with the orange red lipstick and eyeshadow was just too cute. And she's begging for food right now. So she's over here in this 26 gallon, and she'll be upgraded eventually, as will Gordito. But for right now, they're doing fine in these tanks. And she really seems to like being over here in the corner. I have this cat toy that hangs down, and she tries to get it every once in a while. Oh, okay. Well, I think that about covers it for what's going on. Just a lot of water changes on a lot of fish. Since I know people are going to ask me, I don't know exactly when these fish will be for sale. It all depends on how they grow. Right now they're growing pretty well, but that doesn't mean that their growth won't kind of slow down. And I don't generally like to sell small fish, so I'm not sure when I'll start listing them. I'm hoping to have some listed by mid to late January, if not February. But I'm just going to play it by ear. If you're interested in buying fish, the best thing to do is just follow my Facebook page. On eBay, and I don't generally list on Aquabid because it's just a pain. So that's the best place to find my fish. Unfortunately, I cannot ship fish outside of the United States. That's a question I get a lot. There's just too many customs restrictions and stuff, and it's just not legal to ship them outside of the U.S. So I can only sell fish to people that live inside the U.S. So that's going to be about it for this update. Again, to keep up with what's going on in the fish room, I really suggest you join the Facebook page. Maybe consider joining a couple of the Facebook groups I mentioned. I'm on there quite a bit. Always happy to help new breeders, answer their questions, stuff like that. So thanks for watching. I'll try to post another update when I'm able to, and we'll see you next time.